All right, and good afternoon, TMCC and community members. Thank you for joining us today for this celebration. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Natalie Brown, Executive Director of Academic Advisement and Access Services and International Student Services here at TMCC. As some of you know, International Education Week is a joint initiative of the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Department of Education, and it's our opportunity to celebrate the benefits of international education and exchange worldwide, and it's no different here in the biggest little city. While TMCC has been celebrating International Education Week for many years, today is our first ever international symposium. So we're trying a new format. We thought it would be a wonderful opportunity, thank you. We thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to celebrate with art, dialogue, and inspiration, and we hope that you'll find it here today. Now I'd like to have Dr. Laura Briggs come on stage and briefly introduce our keynote speaker and her former TMCC student, George Mwinnyaa. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Laura Briggs, Department Chair of Biology and Community Health Science.
Thank you all for being here. And thank you for the privilege, Virag and Gwen, and honor for introducing my friend and colleague, George Mwinnyaa. George comes to us from humble beginnings. He grew up in West Africa, in Ghana, as a child of a poor family with often inadequate clean water or food to eat, no electricity, none of the modern amenities that we enjoy here. He's the youngest of 32 children, and his prospects were bleak in his home country. He aspired to be a nurse, but in Ghana, he was not qualified to go into nursing training. So he chose to take his shot as a community worker, and eventually that led him to the United States and eventually to TMCC. George's story is fundamentally no different than yours or mine. The details may change and the paths are different, but the truth is we all strive to reach our goals and aspire to realize our potential. Our purposes in life are all the same. Our purpose is to serve. Our existence is built largely on a single component, and that component is love. Love defines our species. It's the spark that ignites our passions and pushes us towards our purpose. George is an example of that reality. A Cinderella story, certainly, and yet his story is each of our stories. We spend our lives striving to be more and give more. Since George graduated from TMCC, he's completed his bachelor's degree and his master's degree at Johns Hopkins, which is one of the premier universities in our country, particularly in the area of public health, which is what his major is. He's worked at the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health as an intern, and currently he is a PhD student at Johns Hopkins. He's here today to make sure that you know that you too can achieve your goals. He's here to make sure you know to let your light shine, let your love shine, and don't hide it for any reason, particularly fear. He's a father, a husband, and a student, striving to make the world a better place. With appreciation and gratitude, I present to you George Mwinnyaa.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and it's always good to be home. There is no place like home, and for me, TMCC is home. And for the past 2 days, I have enjoyed a lot of family love, and I always say in every instance, this is home for me, and I'm grateful and thankful to all of you for showing up and being here and willing to listen to me. So a couple months ago, I visited home for the first time in 6 years, and a month before my trip, I spent a lot of time eating a ton of pizza, cookies, and anything you can imagine, trying to build weight so that I would save my wife trouble, but did not work out. When I go home, my mom saw me, and the first thing she said was, "George, America is not good for you." I said, "Mom, why? Like, so much has happened, and does your wife give you enough food?" I said, "Yes." She's like, "No, you've lost some weight. You were much fat when you were in Ghana. America is not good for you." And this conveyed the concept of how we have different views on different things in terms of our culture. So in my world, gaining weight is a positive thing. And it is actually something I'm still struggling with in the American culture. Many times I see friends and I just want to shake their hand, hug them, and say, "Man, you've gained some weight. Good job." But I cannot say that because here the interpretation is different. On the contrary, in my culture, you dare not tell a person that, excuse me, just go back to the first slide. There is a lot in my culture when you tell someone they've lost weight, that's a big problem. It will only take a mother to say that and get away with it. But any other person, that would be quite a big deal. But this gets to the concept of the differences we have in terms of culture and beliefs. So when I met my wife, my mom was extremely worried. And she did all she can to talk me out of it, and she blamed my siblings for not helping. And I one day sat down with her and I asked, "What is your main concern?" She's like, "George, don't marry a white woman." I said, "Mom, what is it?" She said, "These people, they said you get married to them, and one day when you have the slightest misunderstanding, they will just pull a gun out and shoot you." Where is that from? Definitely Hollywood. You will see that. And I'm just trying to for us to first understand how we view each other and our understanding of the different cultures. When I went home, I took some pictures, printed pictures of my little boys to my auntie, who is in the middle. And she was like, "You guys have children?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Do they give birth?" I'm like, "No. Why they do not give birth? We go to a market and we buy children." She's like, that makes sense. So how does it work? Do you go and then there is just a lot of children and you handpick? I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "But who produces the children?" I'm like, "They have machines that make babies." Anyway, but again, I'm trying to establish the foundations of what my people thought about America. Yes. And personally, before my journey to America, and most of us here are very familiar, we hear the stories of people walking on a desert to go to Libya, and once they're at Libya, they will make the dangerous cross of the Mediterranean to try to get to Spain or Italy. And today I will give you an idea of some of the things that will push an individual to embark on such a dangerous trip. This is a trip myself, I dreamt of embarking on such a trip. It was just some circumstances did not work out, and that is why I'm here today. If not, I don't know where I will be. In Ghana, all we see, and particularly from my village, all we know and see is that in America, a young kid, age 14 or 15, will drive in a really fancy car. Every single family we see is in this huge house. Like dogs, when they are sick, they get to see a trained doctor. And when you see all this, nobody not once, will mention anything to you that people are actually in debt to live in what we see them live in. The vision and the idea that get across is that this is the place, it doesn't even matter who you are, whether you work or not, everybody live really great. Everybody have big houses, big cars, and like just do whatever they want. This is what we see from, again, the popular media and from movies. And so if you live in my world, a situation where sometimes a day will go by and you don't have a single meal to eat. One day a friend told me that they believe a dead tree in America was better than some of the living beings in our village because of what we see. And so at the end of the day, you get to a stage where you have a choice to make. You can stay in the village or perish, and perish. Or you can embark on a trip like this. And if you are lucky, you survive. And if you're not lucky, you die. But the forces get to a point that people would rather choose to embark on a journey like this and lose their lives that way than to stay and die sometimes of hunger. So these are the forces that push us. And these are the forces that make people, even knowing all the dangers, still willing to embark on this journey. Again, what I'm getting to here is just acknowledging the fact that because of our cultures and coming from different backgrounds, our perceptions about each other is different, and how we perceive each other is different. And these are seriously influenced by the agenda of a popular media, and sometimes what we see in movies. When I arrived in America, I was very, very engaged in the community, and I wanted to learn a lot and also share the good part of my culture with the people around me. So I went around schools, boys and girls clubs, to give talks about my culture. I brought with me a xylophone, drums from Ghana, and we have a lot of fun. Usually after my presentation, I'll allow the kids to ask questions. When I finish this presentation, the first question a kid asks, in Africa, do people sleep on trees? That was the first question I got. And in a way, I was happy because this was an opportunity for an exchange and an opportunity to correct probably what she learned from seeing something in a movie or in the news. I had a really nice neighbor who was so excited that I'm from Ghana and I'm here, so he invited me and my wife over for dinner. When we went over to their place, he went inside the house and came out. Told me he was really happy I'm here, because several years ago he was on a mission in Russia or so and met a Ghanaian. I've never been able to reconnect with this Ghanaian, and now that I'm here, he brought a picture for me to see if I know this person, and if I can help him to reconnect with the person. I asked several questions. Do you know their last name? No. I know they were called George. Do you know which village they come from? No. And then I explained that my country, we have 28 million people. It's about the size of Oregon, and that it was very unfortunate. I cannot help. When Nelson Mandela died, I was here, and a teacher invited me to come and talk about apartheid. I didn't understand. When I got there, they were asking me, how is the live experience? How was the era of apartheid? I'm like, I'm from Ghana, and you see that in the green. South Africa is down there. I've never been to South Africa, and I've never lived apartheid life. Yet, again, I was expected to know a lot about South Africa and to talk about apartheid. What this story tells us is that it's a two-way street. Americans definitely have some wrong views about Africa and about Ghana. And similarly, as I demonstrated earlier, my family definitely have some strong, wrong views about America as well. And I think international education provides us the opportunity not just to exchange knowledge, but to also engage and exchange cultures, exchange ideas, and to help correct some of the misconceptions that are trending in the popular media about us and the cultures we don't know. But more importantly, beyond correcting misconceptions, we now live in a very connected world with a lot of movement. It's estimated that 1 billion people travel every year, and about 60%, you see it here, 60% of that is international travel, and you can see the other breakdown. But you all agree with me, people do not move alone. People can move with other things that we don't need. I will set an example with SARS. The SARS outbreak occurred in 2002, 2003. It was just one doctor in China. He treated a person in one province. And then the weekends after that, he traveled to a family wedding in Hong Kong, stayed on the 9th floor of a hotel, transmitted the disease to 16 people from the 9th floor. The 16 people quickly transferred the disease to Canada, Vietnam, and Taiwan. And then by the time the outbreak was over, we have over 8,000 cases occurring in over 29 countries. It started with just one person in one province in China. Again, this is telling you how fragile our world is and how we are really not safe if others are not safe. Another practical example that will be familiar to many of you is Zika. Zika is not a new disease. In fact, it was initially discovered in Uganda, and then over the years moved gradually across borders. And then eventually we had a big outbreak in Brazil that caused a lot of problems, and it became a big thing. I'm trying to make the point of why it's very important for us to create opportunities for people from different countries to study and develop knowledge that is necessary for the prevention of diseases across borders. And that when we train such people and they are able to do a good job in containing a disease, that is the only surest way we can be guaranteed our own safety. And again, in terms of diseases, we are really not safe unless everyone else is safe. And we need to recognize a very popular slide from CDC that I like. Diseases do not recognize our artificial borders. They do not respect our barriers. They can cross wherever they want. And again, this creates a need for us to work together collectively, especially when it comes to some of these issues, and to be open up to creating opportunities for people to be educated and gain the skills it takes to protect their populations, and as well as the global population. So this really nice slide from CDC, as you can see, disease knows no boundaries. And a pathogen today can travel from the most remote part of the world to major cities just in 36 hours. And I am from one of those villages. Sorry. Okay. I grew up in a very remote part of Ghana. This is what I call home. This is where I grew up. And in this village, there was no electricity, running water, and any of the modern amenities you can imagine. And also, let me just put a disclaimer. This is not the whole of Ghana. Like, this is just my village. Because of how remote it was and the conditions there, it was extremely difficult to get trained teachers and doctors to accept a job posting to that location. And so our education system in this village was really like you start school and you know you're already a failure before you even finish. I still remember from grade 1 to grade 6, we have only 2 teachers. And again, like I said, the path was quite clear. Some of us knew that education would never work out for us. And rightly so. And it wasn't surprising. When I graduated from high school, there were about 250 of us who took this national exam that would determine whether you can go to college or not. And among the 250, I was one of the 7 to have all passes in all subjects. A pass in Ghana is different from what you have here. So in Ghana, you are actually considered a failure if you get an F. So our grading system starts from A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so even if you have an E, it's considered a pass. And I'm not sure that's the case for TMCC. So even the 7 of us who passed, it was just on the face value. It was mostly D's and E's. And there's no university in Ghana that will accept that grade from people like us. At the end of the day, the only thing I was able to do was to go and do a 2-year certificate program and become a community health worker. Go back to villages like my village where I was providing immunization services and health education and health promotion activities. And those of you who are familiar with Peace Corps, they don't send Americans to the nicest part of the country. They send them to the most remote part where their services is needed the most. So that is how I met my wife. At that time, a friend who I didn't know it was going to get this far. A lot of people thought she was insane. Among all the Ghanaians and like really well-to-do men with future, why will an American choose a failed man who is in this part of the village that like it just did not make sense? People even believe I used some voodoo to win her love. But for some reason, she has faith in me. I have zero faith in myself when it comes to education. So when we moved to the States, I was actually a custodian. And my main motivation for coming to TMCC was to try to get an associate degree so that I may get promoted to become a lead custodian. And that was the key motivation for me to venture into TMCC. But I was very shocked when I got here. First day in class, a professor explains that classes will be recorded. And that meant that I can go and rewatch these classes 100 times for free. Okay, and then in addition to that, there was a tutoring center. Teachers have office hours. And all of this, I don't have to pay extra to get that. We have YouTube videos for almost every single lecture that is given. Internet is everywhere. And I ask myself, how do people fail in America with all this? And of course, it's relative. It depends on what you've been exposed to from infancy. But even with all this, it was difficult to convince me that I should think of something beyond a community college. But things change, as you can clearly tell. And the story of Hopkins is a different thing. But I applied to Hopkins as a way to be able to put it on a scholarship application that I'll have some ambitions and that they should give me the money. And my intentions were that if I get a scholarship, Hopkins by, I will use that to pay for my fees at UNR and continue. Unfortunately, maybe they did find out my intentions, so they did not give me the scholarship. But then I did get into Hopkins, and there was no way I was going to pay over $1,000 per credit at Hopkins for undergrad. So I was like, this is very humbling, but no thank you. 3 weeks after my admission, things changed. Hopkins gave me a full scholarship. And I thought somebody was just playing tricks on me. But surprisingly, it was true. So I moved to Hopkins, did 2 years. Before I would end that, they waived GRE and waived application fees and asked me to apply to any of the master's programs and that they were going to fully sponsor that. So then just after undergrad, I continued on with the master's fully funded by Hopkins. And then when I finished that, I worked for the NIH for about a year, did several internships, as Laura mentioned earlier. And today, Hopkins is not done with me. I'm still there, and I just started my PhD program. The point I would like to end with, if there is something I want you to take away, particularly the students and even everyone here, local or international. Remember that no matter the circumstances you grow up with and the environment, whatever you might have perceived yourself for being here at TMCC as a student, it is not a limitation. And you should never think that being at TMCC means that you should always aim low, and that it means that you are not a good or strong student to pursue any big school, big institution that you want to get into. In fact, I later find out places like Hopkins, Harvard, MIT, they are hunting for people like us because we bring a lot of rich, diverse way of thinking and looking at things. And community college, I really don't understand why anyone in America will rather start their education in a full 4-year institution. At Hopkins, 1 credit is more than $1,000. And Hopkins accepted all my credits from TMCC. So I cut out 2 full years of more than $1,000 per credit in my life. And in addition, they sponsored it. So I just want you to know that if George from Ghana can do it, you can do it. And I hope that you walk away here recognizing that you are capable of everything. So this was my first time at Hopkins. My little boy was 3 weeks old, and today he's 4 years old. And here I am, graduated from Hopkins, got a chance to engage in a lot of global research, multi-country, multi-million-dollar projects that are currently trying to address some of the biggest challenges we are facing in our world in terms of public health and in terms of disease outbreak. So once again, if there is one thing you take away from this talk, remember that you are capable of doing everything. And thanks to TMCC and all the faculty and staff that made it possible that a failed Ghanaian boy today will be a Hopkins graduate. Thank you.